Today with Claire Byrne on RTE Radio 1.
There are big questions around Christmas today. We know that the Taoiseach poured cold water on any suggestion that we might emerge from level 5 restrictions earlier than the 1st of December. But will we all be able to have the same kind of Christmas as last year? Can family members who are abroad fly back to see everyone during the festive period? And what role, if any, will quarantine play in that? Well, I'm joined on the line now by Eoghan Corry of Air and Travel magazine and also Professor Sam McConkey, infectious disease specialist at the Royal College of Surgeons. Eoghan, I want to start with you on this because this weekend we are expecting some clarity, aren't we, on the European traffic light system. So what will that mean for Irish travellers?
We're signing up for the European traffic light system. It's quite a complex system. It's been presented to the Irish public as much more simple than it actually is. As it was drawn up in September, it had green, amber and red, and there were 3 or 4 metrics. The one that the Irish Minister Eamon Ryan has quoted a lot is that countries with fewer than 25 cases, 14 days, 100,000 population would be on green, fewer than 50 would be on amber, and then everybody else on red or grey if there isn't enough information. Oddly enough, Northern Ireland fits into that category.
Can I just ask you, what does it mean if you are travelling to or from a green country? Does that mean that you don't have to quarantine?
As the different countries have interpreted it, they're interpreting it in different ways. Most countries would say green or amber, no quarantine. Ireland said green, no quarantine, amber, amber a test as an alternative to quarantine, and red, we must quarantine.
Okay, so people looking at coming home for Christmas, or if you would like to travel from Ireland to somewhere else for Christmas, when will we have absolute clarity on the rules?
The traffic light system is completely redundant. If Donald Trump is cranky this morning and he looks for a red wave, he should just look at the map of Europe. There are no green or amber countries going to be left by the time we get into this. So what it will be interesting to see is if the Irish government adopts other aspects of it, which would be included in that would be you're supposed to count it by region, not by country. That would have implications for islands like the Canary Islands, Madeira. You're also supposed to take a testing of more than 4% positive. That hasn't been mentioned when the Irish have addressed this issue. And there are a whole load of categories, including an important one, passengers travelling for imperative family reasons, which should not be subject to restrictions. So what we have, the telegraphing that's been done to Tony Holan, to the Oireachtas Committee on Tuesday, what Eamon Ryan said on Wednesday, right up to this morning on Morning Ireland with Colm Henry, has been that there are going to be no changes in the advice for Christmas. And the way the pendulum is swinging, Claire, that means the very restrictive approach, uniquely restrictive by European standards, there's only about 5 countries that have as restrictive an approach as us, is going to continue to Christmas. And that you can actually see that in the planning for the flights. People are not booking. You can book on Christmas Eve, Dublin to Birmingham for €20. That is not the sort of price you get on Christmas Eve in a normal year.
Okay, so you're not hopeful?
Not at all.
Mm-hmm. Because there are those who would say that coming home for Christmas, if you've been away for most of the year, is essential.
The imperative family reasons don't count, and they're to be interpreted country by country. They don't just count a family visit or a reconnection. They tend to talk about weddings, funerals, and custodial rights, things like that. Mm-hmm. So I don't see very much scope for the government to suddenly decide that there would be a certain period before and after Christmas where we would allow reconnection. And that is a pity, because international travel is not responsible for high level of infections. It's something around 2% right across Europe attributable to international travel. But people tend to react by closing international travel almost as a fallback position. And as you well know, the Ireland that you and I grew up in is very different from the Ireland we're in today. 17% of our population were born abroad. It's not just about the Irish diaspora returning or people connecting with their Irish relatives abroad. There's a very very large number of people who have been disconnected from their families around the world since March, and that includes a huge proportion of the people who are working in the front line against this virus in the first place.
Let's get the infectious disease specialist view now from Professor Sam McConkey. I'm sure you can understand, Sam, that people would want to travel at Christmas, but is it not advisable?
Yeah, good morning, Claire. I have personally lived abroad 11 years in various different continents and really looked forward to coming home most years, either for Christmas or New Year, for often 7 or 14 days. And that was a very important part of my life at that time. And obviously all of us want to get together with our extended family and have good times eating and drinking and socialising together, and maybe even arguing a bit. There's good times and bad times, but we really look forward to it. So, the risk is, I suppose, that if we open the borders and let everyone back in with no restrictions, then it will reintroduce a lot of COVID cases from a bit like what we had from Northern Italy or skiing or Cheltenham back in February and March. And what we heard is largely right. Unfortunately, a lot of the traffic light system in the EU is all the countries, with one or two exceptions like Norway and Estonia and Finland, are now in the red zone. I'm confident the way we're going that we might get out of the red zone, by the first week in December. We've done phenomenally well as a country the last 2 weeks, and the numbers are dropping. If we can drop it, 10% a day, and where some counties, about 10 or 15 counties, are achieving that, then we'd be down to 12 cases by PCR positivity each day by the 4th of December. So I see if we can really keep this hard suppression that we've been doing, we could be down. And I think we know England's gone into kind of equivalent to level 5 restrictions, and they may well come down. So I'm hoping that many countries' reaction in the last week or two, including ours, will bring rates down where there will be some more open travel possible.
OK, well, what about potential solutions to this problem? There have been suggestions that those who want to come home to Ireland could quarantine in their country of origin before getting on the plane. Would that work?
Well, it certainly could help because, of course, it's not so much catching it on the aeroplane that we worry about. It's more people catching it in the 2 weeks where they were walking around freely in wherever they were living, England or US, and then bringing it into Ireland. And that's certainly restricting movements and less socialising, working from home for those 2 weeks would help to prevent those folk bringing that. And a lot of folk, don't want to bring COVID-19 to their mother or grandmother or extended family. So many people might well go along with that. Also, of course, testing pre-travel, maybe testing at day 3 or day 5, those things could all help. Not 100% clear. Unfortunately, the experience has been in Australia and New Zealand that unless you keep people strictly, when I say quarantine, what I mean is essentially locked up for 14 days. We're unfortunately using words very loosely, and at present it's just restricted movements, I believe, are recommended for 14 days to stay in one location. But quarantine, in my view, is a sort of nationally enforced, mandated order where you actually stay in a room, and that's what they're doing in Australia and New Zealand. That works very well. But once you release that, there will be some seepage in of cases. My view is the more we can get the cases down between now and the 4th of December, when we hopefully get some relaxation, the better the public health staff will be able to keep it down, to investigate all outbreaks, to investigate maybe 14 days of contact tracing rather than 48 hours, to build a faster contact tracing system that will keep it down better. Mm-hmm. And then we get longer period of relaxation, maybe even keeping it down, for many months. Yeah,
people are desperate for solutions. I just see a message here from Elizabeth who says, I need to see our sons. I'm 84, my husband is 93. I'm not well. My husband is very affected by the restrictions. Their sons are in Washington and in Jersey. They've been isolating for Christmas. They need this as much as we do. They will stay in when they're here. Is there any hope? So you can understand that people are just desperate to see their family at Christmas time.
I think Jersey, if it's the Jersey and the Channel Islands, has almost no cases. So travelling from Jersey is very, very safe. It may be New Jersey, which is quite a different affair in America, that there's quite a lot of cases, unfortunately. So there are several countries, like Australia, New Zealand, Japan, China, Thailand, where there's very, very few cases. And as we heard the previous speaker saying, that some regions of countries are also relatively safe. The Highlands of Scotland and those places have been very, very small numbers of cases. So just as in Ireland, where, in Leitrim, we've had very few cases, and some other counties are doing very well now, a regional approach to travel might also be very wise, and sort of subdividing large countries, with 300 million people like the US into different areas, because there's very different patterns in different parts of it.
What about a quick antigen test before you get on the plane and when you disembark?
It's probably not a bad idea. The problem is that alone doesn't guarantee that you're not in an incubation period. HICWA did a review on this, published about a week ago, and said it's not sensitive enough. It's nowhere near as sensitive at picking up small amounts of the virus as the PCR test that we've been using up to now.
Okay, anything there, Eoghan, that would give you any hope that we could sort this out before December?
Not much, but I just wanted to tackle 2 points that Sam brought up. Jersey is a good example of what we're talking about. The same policy of quarantine as Guernsey. Guernsey's is very low. Jersey's was very low, and it's got shot through the roof. And the notion that Italian ski resorts and Cheltenham were responsible for the spreading isn't actually true. The track record of international travel as a source of infection is very low. In fact, one very, very highly publicised case from Iraq that arose in your programme earlier this week, and it tends to be relocated, Bangladesh, Pakistan, people like that. So to bracket international travel as a cause of the infection is probably part of the problem here when it comes to policy decisions. Second point I'd make is it is possible to travel. It's just the quarantine that curtails people. And it is interesting that the number of bookings is so far down that the airlines have curtailed the choices. So even if the government was to change its mind and say the virus, we're changing our restrictions, we're relaxing them for a short period before and after Christmas, the flight availability is nothing like it should be at this time of the year.
Okay, we're going to leave that one there. No doubt we will be returning to it. Eoghan Corry and Professor Sam McConkey, thank you both very much indeed for joining us on the programme.